Kaspar, I would like to have an answer. If I should participate in one of the largest IPOs that is coming up in Europe, and you're going to tell us which one that is in a couple of weeks.
It's Porsche.
It's Porsche, yes.
So you know what it is?
Yes.
The company it is?
I know what it is, of course, because that's why I've
And
asked the
you
question.
know us a little bit, we will make some calculations.
Yes.
And based on the calculation, I think we can decide together if it's worth looking at the IPO or not.
Yeah.
But first, this week, this now Thursday afternoon, something happened. Bad news came. Bad news came in the market. Martin, what happened?
Definitely, yes. We are at the, as you say, Thursday afternoon. Just before we went to the studio, the market was going down again. But what happened on Tuesday was slightly worse. We saw the S&P 500 dropping almost 4.5% and the Nasdaq even 5.6%. Why was that? Because the consumer price index figures were presented. In our time, approximately at 2:30. The S&P at that moment was trading around 4,100 something, and we ended the evening below the 3,950. So we had a 200-point drop in the S&P. And what happened actually? What is the CPI index? It's not. It feels like it's the same as inflation. So it gives the monthly change in prices, but for consumers. So not on the entire economy. If you look at the inflation, it takes much more in consideration other things like the gross domestic product. And also it looks much more at inclusion of the exports. So what is the company exporting to the outside? What happened actually was that the consumer price index, it's a basket of goods. So what happened in this case, it was much higher than expected. We know that the Fed has been doing a lot. They've been increasing, they have been increasing interest rates. That's what they can do. Why do they do that? Because then, of course, you see that back in your mortgage, you see that back in consumer credits, etc. So you will have less spending power because you need to pay your mortgage, which is more expensive. So that's quite easy to explain, but it is how it is. The figure came out at 0.6% change on a monthly basis, where it was 0.3% expected. But what is important is that the core CPI is taking out, in this case, food and petrol. And why do they take that out? Because they have very high volatility. If you look at the
you can say that, especially petrol.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, on if you look in March, for instance, the petrol prices had gone up around 12%. So the impact on the inflation figure on itself, if you don't take that out, is so much higher. But the core CPI, taking out this, in this case, food and petrol, was also a lot higher, and that was not expected. So the core CPI was actually the trigger for the market to go down, because it is now expected, obviously, by all the analysts and all the wise guys, that the Fed will increase the interest next week, when it is Fed week again, with 0.75 or maybe even 1%. So yeah, and that obviously triggers a lot of other fears. Are we going to get into a recession? And you saw really an overreaction in the market, if we could say so. That's also what's been stated by many larger CEOs that have then a 5-minute chat on CNBC or Bloomberg. For instance, the CEO of JP Morgan, he said, this is an overreaction, mainly the financials, because they won't get hit so hard by an increase of interest. You saw also a big hit in airlines, but on airlines you saw that prices are dropping already quite heavily. Plane tickets the fares are dropping quite heavily, and also, of course, the normal gasoline prices are going down. Diesel prices not as much. Why? Because you need gas, and gas is still sky high to produce diesel.
Oh, also went back.
Yeah, but not a lot. I don't think so much.
To 200.
Yeah, but you don't see it back at when you buy it.
No.
So all in all, the market was expecting that they were hoping that the measurements of the Fed would have a higher impact already, and that did not happen. So it's just a matter of what will happen next week. If they increase indeed with 0.75 or 1%, then for the months of November and December, it also leaves space, because people will feel this left or right. You can't ignore that this will be felt in the pockets of the consumers, and then it might also be possible that instead of continuing with high rate hikes, that in the last 2 months of this year, the Fed might even surprise us with 0.25 if it is enough. If the
but
impact
also
now
that will
starts.
take in consideration how increasements will affect the stock market.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but I always have that, like, some sort of. You know what I did once? I went back to looking at the monetary speeches of Bernanke. And then, of course, the stock market was in like the worst days of the stock market. And he had a meeting like just nothing was going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, how would they be reacting? Would they be in panic? Because our clients were at that moment in 2007, 2008, they were in panic. And they were, yes, well, we see some movements in the market. They didn't really respond as something really frightening was happening. But of course, yeah, it's interesting to follow. It has a big impact for you as an investor, specifically if you trade options as well, and if you just have stocks. I mean, the overreaction, Facebook, Google, Amazon, all the stocks on that 8%, just because of this, you know. And it's you're dealing with it and you feel it. So it's really important to take this in consideration.
Yeah.
But now something more relaxed, something nicer to look at. Porsche.
It's a beautiful car.
Beautiful, yes.
Porsche versus Ferrari, we're going to talk about that in the last part, because that's how you can look at the company, how you can look at the share.
Yeah.
Ferrari is a luxury brand. Is Porsche the same, or even more or less?
Yeah.
But it's important for the valuation, I think,
Definitely.
for the valuation that you should do for yourself.
Yeah.
One step back, or two, three step backs. Ferdinand Porsche was the founder of Porsche. He had 2 children, a girl and a boy. His boy was also called Ferdinand, and his daughter was called Louise. And she married with Anton Pietsch, and together, those 2 families, the Pietsch, I hope I pronounce it well enough, because it's a German name, and the Porsche family, they controlled and control Porsche. Even
He married a good wife. No?
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't know how his background was, but
No,
I think
maybe he was very wealthy,
Yeah.
and Porsche could do it because of him. But okay.
because you should know something about the structure about Porsche and Volkswagen, because it's a little bit more complicated than normal stocks on the stock market, and you should be aware of that if you are looking at the IPO of Volkswagen. The CEO of Volkswagen is really ambitious. He said in 2025, I want to be the biggest seller of electric cars, EVs. And he wants to be bigger than Tesla. So he's quite ambitious.
That's ambitious.
And to be successful in selling something, you need money to invest.
Yes.
They have already invested a lot in that sector, because they produce a lot of electric successful cars. But the investments, they can need more money for that. And I won't call them rumors, but what you see in the market is that they want to sell part of the Volkswagen company, that's Porsche, so they have extra money that
Cash.
they can use to invest to even go faster with the development of electric
EVs.
cars. Yeah. So Volkswagen owns a couple of brands. Bugatti, Audi,
Seat, Ducati.
Seat, and Porsche. So
Porsche,
the company Porsche that makes the cars is owned by Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Then you have a holding company, that's Porsche SE.
Yeah.
And that's mainly, the main shareholders are the 2 families that I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So Porsche and Pietsch. And they own 30, they increased the amount of shares in the last months. They own now around 33% of all the shares of Volkswagen. So the holding company, that's called Porsche SE, nothing to do with the car.
No, already has a listing also on the market.
Yeah, as a listing, own around 33% of the share, the company Volkswagen. Volkswagen, again, owns Porsche as a car producer. They have 53%, and they is Porsche SE, the holding company, has 53% of the voting rights. So they are a main shareholder with a main voting right. They can decide a lot.
Yeah, they can do a lot. Yeah.
And for example, you have also the state of Lower Saxo. That's a local state in Germany. Saxon. Yeah, they have also a big stake, and also a holding company of Qatar. They have also 10.5% stake in the company.
That is interesting.
And 17% voting stake, yeah. And I don't understand, because I think Qatar earns a lot of money from...
Yeah, from petrol.
Yeah, so maybe they are pushing the brakes within the development of the electric vehicle cars, because that's not good. Or they do it just
but then they cut their own fingers with their investment.
Yeah. Yeah, but,
Doesn't make
but
sense.
it is strange. It's
Yeah,
strange,
yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Or they say, okay, if we have money, we can't earn it in the future with oil anymore. We can earn it with electric cars.
Yeah,
But it's interesting.
If you want to be the biggest of the world.
Yeah.
Smart.
And the new company, so the new Volkswagen company, if they go public, will have the same CEO as Volkswagen now have. So he will have a double role. So you see, it will be close to that. And they also say no, we will developments together, etc. etc. So that will be the same. And there are shares already of Porsche, but all those shares are owned by Volkswagen. And how many shares there are? 911 million shares.
Yeah.
911 million shares. So that's quite funny.
Yeah, I think so. It's very funny. Yeah.
And they will divide it by half, so 455 each, preference shares and ordinary shares. The preferred one, they will be listed on the stock market. And Porsche, the holding company, already said that they will buy 25% of the ordinary shares for a premium 7.5% more than the price that they will go to the stock market. Can you still follow me?
Yeah, I'm listening. I'm trying to get the figures.
You can always stop it and go back and listen again. I hope I explain it. Also funny to see and then we are at the comparison Ferrari versus Porsche. Porsche is hiring Mediobanca, and those guys also they advised Ferrari with the IPO in 2015.
Funny that they take an Italian bank, why not a German bank?
Yeah.
Also Mediobanca. Yeah, but I know Mediobanca does a lot of these things.
Yeah, luxury brands.
Yeah.
Luxury brands. So they what they want to say is that Porsche is a luxury brand, especially versus Volkswagen.
Yeah, true.
So I think that's a big step what they're doing. And if you compare those two companies, I think Porsche is only producing one real electric car, is the Taycan, and the amount of Taycans that they now produce and sell on a yearly basis are 4 times higher than the total amount of Ferraris that Ferrari sells. So if you look at the
the other ones are all hybrids. What you see, the Cayennes that's a hybrid. Yeah.
So that car is on the market for 2 years. So Ferrari only produces a couple of cars, and Porsche produces a lot. If you look at the States. In America, you can already buy a new Porsche for $35,000, and a Ferrari starts at $250,000. I think Porsche wants to be a luxury car, but they are not that luxury as Porsche is.
No.
If you look at the profit margins, between 17 and 90% for Porsche, and around 25% of Ferrari.
So you would say Ferrari is the winner here on profit margins.
Yeah. But you see back in the price, in the share price.
Yeah.
All the shares of Ferrari are public traded, and they will the total amount of the 911 million shares, only 12.5%, or probably 10% will go to the market. So there are only 10% of people that will decide what the price will, and that's all. That can be, a price pressure. Right? So a lot of people want to buy.
It's a smart thing, I think.
Yeah. So then then we look at the valuation. You see, in the market, they say it's valuated, the company Porsche, for 80 billion euros. And by bringing 80 billion to the market, it will be one of the biggest IPOs in Germany, and I think the largest IPO in Europe since 20 years. Yeah. I don't think it will be 80 million, because the total because Volkswagen is already has a value of 90. So I don't think that
it's quite strange,
that
right?
Porsche is valued at 80 and all the other brands for
10.
Yeah, for 10. It's ridiculous.
It's also they leave Volkswagen with no value.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. So yelling a number of 80 billion, I think it doesn't make sense. HBSC also said it officially. We think it's around 44 billion worth. Okay, if you look at the big numbers, 85 billion, then you have a PE of 16, and when 65 you have a PE of 12, and with 45 you have a PE of something like 10 maybe. Yeah. If you look at the PE of Ferrari, it's 35. And if you look at the PE of Volkswagen, it's 5. So Volkswagen in general is
It's much cheaper.
yeah, you only pay 5 times the profit.
Mm.
Ferrari you pay 35, so it will be somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And they try to push it as high as it,
Of
as it
course.
can be. It's like 16, then you pay 80 billion, 85 billion. But I think so. For you, do you want to participate in the IPO? Look really carefully at the numbers.
Yes.
And look at what the price the company will be valuated. I think if they try to push it in the market for 80 billion, please be careful.
Yeah.
If they will bring it to the market for 10 billion, I think you are not the only one.
No.
And that can also be.
Yeah.
So I always think IPOs are a little bit difficult because you don't know how the market responds. So if you say, for example, you want to invest a certain amount, then you do the IPO to participate for a small amount, and then you look at the market after the first weeks how it responds on it. I think so. Be careful. Look at the numbers, but it's a really interesting brand, company, product, and IPO.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching. Give us
See
a
you next
thumb.
week.
See you next week.